Okay, so welcome and thank you for joining today's webinar about how to challenge mobile coverage data depicted on the National Broadband Map. I'm Jean Cadieux, Chair of the FCC's Broadband Data Task Force. As most of you know, the FCC's Broadband Data Collection, or BDC as we typically call it, requires mobile broadband providers to file data twice a year depicting their mobile broadband availability. The Commission publishes that data on the National Broadband Map. Because the BDC requires that the data be submitted consistent with certain standardized propagation modeling parameters, the map is by far the most granular and consistent depiction of mobile broadband coverage ever available to the FCC, other federal and state agencies, and American consumers. And because updated data is submitted on a biannual basis, the BDC is an iterative process. The map is regularly updated to reflect network expansions and other changes to the data previously reported to the BDC. Importantly, the map updates include not only changes submitted by providers in their biannual filings, but also the results of challenges based upon on-the-ground speed test results submitted by consumers and other stakeholders. Consumer and bulk challenges play an important role in the FCC's ongoing effort to provide precise information regarding mobile broadband availability across the country and to ensure that funding is targeted where it is most in need. By sharing your real-world broadband experiences with the FCC, we will continue to have a more complete understanding of where mobile broadband coverage is still needed. During this webinar, FCC staff will provide an overview of how to view mobile coverage data on the National Broadband Map, how to use the new FCC Mobile Speed Test app, how consumers and other stakeholders can review tests submitted using the app, and how the bulk challenge process works. Submitting tests using the FCC's Mobile Speed Test app is the easiest way to participate in the challenge process. Running tests as you do normal routine tasks, like commuting to work or taking a walk, will contribute to the creation of challenges. But there are also opportunities for stakeholders to use other apps to collect data and submit bulk challenges. Later in today's webinar, we will go into some detail on the thresholds for submitting speed tests that constitute cognizable mobile challenges. This webinar will cover some fairly technical information, so we have reserved time for questions after the presentations. Participants are encouraged to submit their questions using the Q&A function on the Zoom platform, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end as time allows. If we're unable to answer a specific question today, you may submit it using the online form available on the BDC Help Center at www.fcc.gov/broadbanddata/help. You can find additional information and technical assistance resources, including tutorial videos and FAQs there as well. A video of today's webinar and the slides will be posted to the FCC's website following the webinar. We very much appreciate your taking the time to participate in this webinar and hope that it will be helpful to you if you'll be filing mobile challenge data. So with all of that, let's start the presentations. I'll hand it off to William Holloway, our Assistant Counsel on the Broadband Data Task Force and an Attorney Advisor in the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau. Will?
Thanks, Jean. Today, I'll be giving a summary of the BDC mobile filing requirements and a demonstration of the mobile data displayed on the FCC National Broadband Map. First, I'll start with an overview of the BDC mobile filing requirements. For the past few years, the Commission has collected availability data under the Broadband Data Collection, or BDC, which implements the Broadband Data Act. BDC is a highly granular location-by-location data collection for reporting fixed and mobile broadband internet access service that replaces the Commission's old Form 477 census-based method of reporting. Under the BDC, the FCC collects data from providers of mobile broadband internet access on a biannual basis in the form of standardized propagation maps and model details on providers' 3G, 4G, and 5G coverage. Providers must submit propagation maps and propagation model details based on minimum specified parameters, or in other words, a map depicting where they expect their mobile service to be available. Providers must submit maps for each technology, meaning 3G, 4G LTE, and 5G NR. For 3G, providers would submit maps showing minimum speeds of 200 over 50 kilobits per second. For 4G LTE, providers' maps will reflect minimum speeds of 5 over 1 megabit per second. And for 5G NR, providers submit both two maps showing minimum speeds of both 7 over 1 and 35 over 3 megabits per second. For each technology and speed, providers must report expected coverage for both outdoor stationary and in-vehicle mobile use. The maps must reflect coverage areas where users should expect to receive the minimum required download and upload speeds with not less than a 90% cell edge coverage probability and cell loading factor of not less than 50%. The maps are filed using a spatial resolution of 100 meters or better, meaning the model depicts coverage of grid cells as small as 100 meters by 100 meters. Providers must account for clutter, such as terrain, foliage, and other obstructions in their models, and providers must submit details of their propagation models and link budgets. So I'll now move on to demonstrate how to view the mobile coverage on the FCC National Broadband Map. So it's most common to search by address, but you can also search by location, provider, and area using the other tabs here on the main page. We'll enter an address or a city name in the search tab. And for this example, we'll use Petersburg, West Virginia. Now, this is a somewhat rural area, and you can see if I zoom out that it borders the Potomac Wildlife Management Area and some other areas with more sparse mobile coverage. The map defaults to showing fixed broadband, but if you click this button here on the right-hand side of the screen, it will depict the mobile broadband map. You'll see on the right-hand side that there's a listing of each provider that makes coverage available in this area and the types of technologies that they offer. I'll also note that you can filter the map based on the filing period. So we have shown the latest filing period of December 31st, 2023, but you can also click this button here on the right-hand side and it shows data as of the prior filing periods. I also wanted to note that in addition to searching by address, you can search by coordinates and H3 hexagons. So today you'll hear a lot about hexagons. The mobile maps show a hexagonal grid based on an open source mapping tool that assigns a unique identifier to each hexagon-shaped area. So the smallest hexagon is going to be depicted at the hexagon level 9 resolution. You can see that on the left-hand side of the screen. And it will zoom out to show hexagons as large as a hexagon at hex level 5 resolution. And you can see the hexagons get bigger as you zoom out. You can also see if I zoom back in or at any level of the map that if you scan across the various hexagons, you'll see that it shows a percentage of the hexagon that is covered. And as you move towards the edge, you'll notice that certain hexagons are shaded more light, and that indicates that the coverage percentage has dropped in that hexagon. And then if you move closer towards the wildlife management area here on the left-hand side of the map, you'll see that there's some areas that are not covered by any hexagon. That represents that a mobile provider has not reported any coverage in that area. You'll see at the top of the screen that you can filter the maps based on environment and technology. So the map defaults to showing outdoor stationary at 4G speeds. If you click the service filter button, you can then filter the map based on outdoor stationary environment or in-vehicle mobile coverage. You can then click between the various technologies offered, and you see that the map is interactive and it therefore is responsive as I click the various filters. So in addition to showing coverage represented by hexagons, if you're zoomed in to a hex level 7 or lower, you'll be able to view a provider's coverage, a provider's raw coverage. You'll click this toggle layers button on the left-hand side of the screen. And for this exercise, I'm going to show the satellite view of the area. And then you'll see this description, raw data layer and coverage footprint. And if you click that box, you'll see the provider's raw coverage. You can also view the map using the provider detail tab up at the top. Again, we'll click the mobile broadband tab on the right-hand side. We'll add a provider. So for this exercise, we'll use T-Mobile. And we'll look at their 4G LTE coverage. And here you can see the map populates T-Mobile's reported coverage of 4G LTE service in the outdoor stationary environment. Again, you can click the service filter button and toggle between outdoor stationary and in-vehicle mobile coverage. You can add a second provider. We'll use Verizon. And we'll see their 4G LTE coverage. And you can see that the coverage begins to overlap over T-Mobile's coverage on the map. So these purple areas represent where T-Mobile and Verizon are both reporting coverage. If you zoom in closer, you'll see the red areas represent where only T-Mobile is reporting coverage, and these more light blue shaded areas represent where Verizon is reporting coverage and T-Mobile is not. We'll next look at the area summary page. We can sort here by state and other geographic categories. We'll stick with the state of West Virginia. And we'll click again, mobile data, mobile broadband. And here you can see mobile coverage specific to the state of West Virginia and statistics for percent of area covered, top providers, and other geographic features on the right-hand side of the screen. Next, move on to show how to download the map data. You'll click Data Download at the top of the screen. And you can search this page by the 3 tabs at the top, so by state, by provider, and by challenges. So we'll start with the state, and again, we'll use West Virginia as our example. And once you've filled in a state, you can download a CSV file of mobile data showing the total stationary and in-vehicle coverage for each provider by technology. That would be here on the left-hand side of the screen under the heading Provider Summary Mobile Broadband. If you scroll down, you can also download a CSV file of mobile broadband coverage percentages for various geography types by technology and speed. And then separately, you can download mobile availability data by technology on the right-hand side of the screen. Now, show how you can download data by provider. So again, you can, as I mentioned before, you can toggle between the various data vintages on the left-hand side. And then if you type in a provider name, so we'll use Smith Bagley for this example. You can then download mobile broadband coverage by hexagons and raw coverage for the reported technology. So you would scroll over to the relevant technology, click the arrow, and then click whether you want to download based on the hexagon coverage or the raw coverage. You can also download a mobile provider supporting data, and the categories of data that you can download using this feature are clutter categories, link budget description, link budget parameters, propagation model conditions, propagation model details, and mobile link budget association. Finally, you can download mobile challenges by clicking the Challenges tab at the top. When you navigate to data type, you can scroll down to view mobile challenges based on whether they're in progress or resolved. So we'll click in progress. And again, you can sort by state, or you can see all of the states where challenges have been filed if you scroll down. So downloads will happen in a tabular CSV format, and it may be helpful to view the data specifications up here in the top right hand of the screen for descriptions of all the fields that you can download. Now, in addition, I'll click over to another screen. You can view the map if you're not logged into it. Separately, if you log into the map with an email address, you can view the challenges that you may have filed. Now, we'll talk more about the mobile challenge process later on in the presentation. Specifically, we'll discuss using the FCC mobile speed test app to conduct speed tests. But we did want to note that if you take speed tests using the FCC speed test app, you'll be able to view them by logging in using the same email address that you used in the app on this screen. And it's, again, under the heading Consumer Challenges. And if you navigate to Mobile Speed Test, you'll be able to see the individual test. So I'm using a demo version of the map. So please note that these speed tests are not real, but they are representative of what a consumer can expect to see when they log into the map. So again, this is a representation of all of the speed tests that a user may have conducted using the FCC speed test app. You can see that the tests are challenged by challenge speed test or crowdsourced speed test, which again, we'll go into more detail about in the next video. You can see that the speed test contain descriptions here of the date the test was run, the provider, the environment, the status, whether it was accepted by the BDC system, whether it contributed to a challenge, as well as the technology the test was run on, etc. You can then click into the individual challenge test ID here on the left-hand side of the screen and see a much more detailed description of each individual test. Additionally, you can click the button on the right-hand side of the screen that says View Map, which will pull up a separate map showing where you conducted all of your speed tests. So if we zoom in to the map and we'll look in Northern California. And again, this is a demo environment of the map, but hypothetically, if I ran these speed tests in Northern California, they would show up on the map like this. You can see these are the individual speed tests. They correlate to the status on the right-hand side of the screen. And if you hover over each speed test, you can see more detailed information about the challenge, the contact information, and the data that was submitted through the FCC app. If you click on this tab entitled Mobile Challenges, this will again show the individual speed test information, and it will show whether your speed test contributed to a challenge, and if so, it shows information on that particular challenge. So for example, this speed test, this hexagon that has been challenged, you can see the total number of speed tests. You can see that hypothetically, again, my one speed test contributed to this challenge. And then you can see whether a challenge was created and the outcome of that challenge. You can also view a map of the challenged area, which pulls up a hexagon indicating that that hexagon has been challenged. And if you hover over your speed test, you can see the information relevant to your particular speed test. So this concludes our demonstration of the FCC National Broadband Map. And next up, we have a video demonstrating the functionality of the FCC's mobile speed test application.
With the new FCC Mobile Speed Test app, you can check the performance of your wireless connection and dispute the mobile coverage providers have reported on the National Broadband Map. After you download the ad-free FCC Mobile Speed Test app from your App Store and install it, open the app. The app will ask for permission to access your location, which is important to support challenges to mobile coverage. Choose if you want to run a single test or a repeated test, and then pick from the 3 types of speed tests. To dispute or challenge the coverage or speed reported by your mobile provider, choose the Challenge Test option. Crowdsourced tests are also shared with the FCC and may help verify and improve the accuracy of the National Broadband Map. If you do not want to enter your contact information or share it with the FCC or your provider, choose the Quick Check Speed Test. To run a Quick Check Speed Test, tap Single Test, then Quick Check. Quick Check tests can be run indoors or over Wi-Fi networks, and they will not challenge or otherwise impact provider coverage shown on the map. Tap OK. Select the indoor, outdoor, or the in-vehicle option, depending on where you are. On the next screen, wait while the test runs. The test results will display on your screen. You can tap the button to run the test again or run a challenge test. You can also go back to the home screen and run a different type of test. Here's how to run a challenge test. On the home screen, select Single Test, then tap Challenge, followed by Start Test. The first time you run the test, you will need to enter your first name, last name, and email address. You will also need to provide the phone number of the mobile device. This information is required by FCC rules when submitting challenge tests. If you want more information about how your data will be stored, used, and protected, tap the Privacy Policy link. You will need to confirm a few things. First, that you agree to the policy. Second, that your provided information is correct. Third, that your mobile data is turned on with no restrictions set for the connection type and airplane mode is off. Fourth, that you are the subscriber or authorized user of the provider being challenged and that the speed test app is working normally. And fifth, that you allow the provider you are challenging to share certain data with the FCC as part of the challenge response. Also, please be sure to check that you entered a valid email address and your 10-digit phone number. Select the outdoor or the in-vehicle option, depending on where you are, and tap Continue. Note that challenge speed tests may not be conducted indoors. Test results are automatically submitted to the FCC when the test is finished. You can tap Challenge again to submit another test. You can find the results of all your tests by tapping on History at the bottom of the screen. To run a crowdsourced test, you must provide only your full name and email address before choosing where you are running the test. You can also run a crowdsourced test on a Wi-Fi network. For more information on how these test results will be aggregated to challenge mobile coverage, tap on Settings at the bottom right of the screen, then select About in the menu options. If your speed test results contribute to a challenge that is sent to a provider, you will receive email updates on its status. To run multiple tests back-to-back, you can use the Repeated Test option. This hands-free testing option allows you to run tests while driving along a route you frequently travel, such as your daily commute, or while walking around outdoors. You can choose the number of tests and how far apart you want the test to run. Tests will continue to run automatically for up to 4 hours. You can stop the repeated tests during the break between test cycles. Worried about using too much data on speed testing? You can easily restrict how much data the app is using by going to the Settings tab at the bottom of the screen. You can set a data usage cap and the day of the month when it will reset. The app will notify you when 75% of the cap is reached. Android users can configure the app to run scheduled crowdsourced tests seamlessly in the background on a daily, weekly, or monthly basis. Background tests offer a more precise representation of mobile network performance because they are randomly distributed across different timeframes and locations. You can also log into the National Broadband Map to see information about the challenge tests you take with the app. These speed test results will help improve the map and ensure funding for mobile networks is directed to areas that need it most.
My name is Sean Sullivan, and I am an economist in the Office of Economics and Analytics. Now that we have discussed how to view mobile coverage on the National Broadband Map and how to use the FCC Speed Test app, I am going to give an overview of the mobile challenge process rules and discuss a few hypothetical examples of how to potentially challenge mobile coverage while doing routine tasks. As Jean noted earlier, submitting tests using the FCC mobile speed test app is the easiest way to participate in the mobile challenge process. And simply running tests while you're outside or using the repeated test option when driving can help contribute to creating challenges. Consumers' speed tests as well as bulk challengers' speed tests will be aggregated together to determine if the combined effort has met certain thresholds. And if the set of speed tests have met these thresholds, they will constitute what we refer to as a cognizable challenge to the area. And this challenge will be shared with the provider for a response. In the upcoming slides, we will talk about why it takes more than one test to create a cognizable challenge and the thresholds that are important for stakeholders interested in submitting bulk challenges to keep in mind. Next slide. The mobile challenge process is based on the H3 system of hexagons, which tiles the entire United States into sets of different size or resolution hexagons, where higher resolution hexagons nest within lower resolution hexagons. The image on the slide shows a hexagon, the pink outline of a six-sided shape, with smaller hexagons nested inside. The fixed broadband challenge process is intended to challenge the availability of service at a specific home or small business location. Since consumers expect mobile service to be available throughout a coverage area or when they are on the move and not just in a single location, the mobile challenge process creates challenges to wider geographic areas. In particular, the mobile challenge process uses resolution 8 hexagons, or hex 8s, as the smallest geographic area for a cognizable mobile challenge. We typically refer to hexagons in terms of their parent-child relationship. For example, a parent hex 8 contains 7 child hex 9s, as shown in the image on the right. A hex 8 is about 0.7 square kilometers, and a hex 9 is about 0.1 square kilometers, or roughly 20 football fields. Next slide, please. As you saw during the demo, the FCC Speed Test app will conduct each speed test by first measuring download speed and then measuring upload speed. We refer to these measurements as the components of the speed test. Download components and upload components are evaluated separately against the relevant speed threshold. For example, a speed test conducted in a provider's 4G LTE coverage area will have its components compared against the 5 megabit per second download threshold and 1 megabit per second upload threshold. A component at or above the threshold is referred to as a positive component, and a component below the threshold is referred to as a negative component. As a result, a single speed test may have a positive download component, but a negative upload component, or vice versa. Please note that speed tests must be conducted within the provider's claimed coverage area based on its raw coverage footprint. As Will covered, the national broadband map displays both different hexagon level coverage data depending on the zoom level, as well as raw coverage data at zoom level 10 or higher. In the image shown on the slide, the orange shading represents the raw coverage. Any speed test components taken outside the provider's raw coverage footprint will not contribute to the creation of cognizable challenges. When conducting speed tests, you must indicate the testing environment, outdoor stationary or in-vehicle mobile, so that the tests will be evaluated against the corresponding coverage map. Challenges to the provider's outdoor stationary coverage will automatically generate a collateral challenge to the provider's in-vehicle coverage in that area, if the provider also claims such coverage in the challenged area. Before moving to the next slide, please remember you may leave questions in the Q&A chat. Next slide, please. An individual speed test may be affected by a multitude of factors such as foliage, vehicle traffic, congestion from other users, even the weather, which means one test may not represent typical coverage. As a result, a single speed test failing to reach the download or upload speed thresholds is not sufficient to create a cognizable challenge. Instead, we rely on statistical sampling to determine whether a provider's claimed coverage is accurate. To successfully create a representative sample and a cognizable challenge of an area, enough failed tests need to be taken at different locations within the area and at different times of day. The geographic threshold ensures that the poor coverage is widespread within the area being challenged. The temporal threshold ensures that the poor coverage exists at multiple times per day. The testing threshold ensures that we have enough speed tests to reliably make a statistical conclusion. I will provide some more details on each of the thresholds in the next slides. Because download and upload test results are evaluated separately, if either of the download components or the upload components meet the three thresholds, the area would be considered challenged. Also, all speed tests are aggregated across challengers, so your speed test will be pooled together with anyone else's speed test, so a combined effort may successfully create a challenge. Please review the mobile technical requirements order for the full details of the mobile challenge process rules. Next slide, please. The geographic threshold requires that speed tests be taken in a minimum number of hex 9s within the area being challenged. Each of those hex 9s needs to have test results for at least 2 of the same component types, download or upload, with at least one of those components not meeting or exceeding the minimum speed required for the service reported. Each child hex 9 of a parent hex 8 is classified as either accessible or inaccessible based on the presence of roads in the provider's claimed coverage. Specifically, a hex 9 is considered accessible if the provider claims at least 50% of the area of the hex 9 and a road is present in the hex 9. The table in this slide presents the minimum number of accessible hex 9s that need 2 total tests, at least 1 negative test result. The image on the right shows an example of a hex 8 with 4 accessible hex 9s, the 4 that have a road passing through. If a hex 8 has 0 accessible hex 9s, perhaps because there are no roads in the area, the geographic threshold does not need to be satisfied. Next slide. The temporal threshold requires that within the challenge area, there must be a set of 2 negative test results of the same component type, either upload or download, with a time of day difference of at least 4 hours, with another set of 2 negative test results of the same component type. The dates of each speed test are not considered when checking this threshold. Suppose a challenger first conducts 10 tests over 2 days to challenge 4G LTE coverage, which has a download speed threshold of 5 megabits per second, as shown in the chart on the right. The first set of test components, number 1 and number 2, and the second set of test components, number 6 and 7, are separated by 4 hours and 59 minutes from 8:01 a.m. to 1 p.m., regardless of the date of the test. Next slide. Testing threshold requires that a certain number or percentage of total upload or download test results within the challenge area are negative. The percentage of negative tests or failure rate depend on the total number of speed tests conducted. Any components taken within the provider's coverage area within the Hex 8 count towards evaluating the testing threshold. When 20 or fewer speed tests are conducted, only 5 negative components of the same type test results are required to satisfy this threshold. If over 100 speed tests are conducted within the challenge area, the percentage of negative tests must be at least 16%. Next slide. Now I want to walk you through an example of how running tests during your daily commute or while running errands may create a challenge. Suppose we believe a provider's 4G LTE in-vehicle coverage claims are inadequate in our neighborhood. If you get in your car at your house and start a repeated test cycle, tests will run hands-free while you are driving. In our example, you leave your driveway and head towards Sunnyside Road, making a right turn to exit your neighborhood and continue along that road. The yellow arrows on the image highlight the direction of your route. The black circles represent the tests collected by the repeated test sequence being run in the FCC mobile speed test app along the way. Now, let's compare the tests collected to the 3 thresholds that must be met: geographic, temporal, and testing. Because the provider claims to cover 100% of the area, and the Hex 8 has roads in every Hex 9, we must conduct speed tests in at least 4 of the 7 child Hex 9s, because all 7 Hex 9s are accessible. We have numbered each of the 7 child Hex 9s in the Hex 8 so we can refer to them in this presentation. As you can see, by driving along your normal route, tests were run in 4 different Hex 9s, meeting the geographic threshold. Next slide. If we also run tests on both our commute to work and home from work, we will likely meet the temporal threshold. Since we evaluate upload and download speeds separately, let's focus on upload speeds in our example. In the morning, the app conducts 1 test in each of the locations for a total of 4 tests. The green triangles represent upload results that meet or exceed the speed of the reported coverage, and the red triangles represent upload results below the speed of the reported coverage, in this case 1 megabit per second for 4G LTE. In this example, 2 of the 4 Hex 9s have negative upload components shown in red in the chart on the slide. Next slide, please. After work, we conduct a second round of speed tests in the same locations as we commute back home. Of the 4 evening tests, 3 results were below the 1 megabit per second upload speed expected for 4G LTE. The chart shows the 8 total tests from the morning and evening rounds, with green rows representing positive upload components and red rows representing negative upload components. Because our commute home in the second round of testing was over 4 hours after we finished conducting the morning round of tests, we have met the temporal threshold. Finally, the testing threshold is met because with a total of less than 20 components, we only need 5 negative components: the 2 morning tests and the 3 evening tests that fell below 1 megabit per second upload, for a failure rate of 62.5%. Next slide, please. By running hands-free repeated tests of a provider's reported 4G LTE coverage on your commute to and from work, and enough test results were collected to create a cognizable challenge, which will be sent to the provider for a response. If any other speed tests conducted by other challengers in the challenge area, such as your neighbors, the full set of download and upload components are checked against the 3 thresholds to determine whether a cognizable challenge has been created. Next slide, please. In our next example, we want to demonstrate how you might create a cognizable challenge in an area with limited roads. Suppose your house backs up to a protected area with no other roads besides the road leading to your house. See the black circle and the hex 9 labeled number 5. This would result in a single accessible hex 9 area, with the hex 8 area being challenged. Assume the provider claims 100% coverage for 5G NR outdoor stationary at the 7.1 megabit per second threshold. And again, in this example, we will focus on upload speeds, which need to be 1 megabit per second or greater for the 5G NR at 7.1. As we discussed earlier, a single accessible hex 9 means that the geographic threshold that we need to satisfy is 1, or in other words, all our tests can be conducted in a single area, the hex 9 labeled number 5 in this example. Next slide, please. Let's assume you take walks with your dog and have noticed that you get poor signal strength while walking around your house. During your morning walk, you conduct 3 tests. Again, testing could occur in any of the child hex 9s and would still count towards all thresholds. We find that only 1 of the 3 upload components are negative. We've already satisfied the geographic threshold because we have conducted at least 2 components of the same type, with at least 1 being negative in a single hex 9. Next slide. In the afternoon, we conduct an additional 3 tests while walking around. None of the 3 upload components met the 1 megabit per second upload threshold. Overall, we now have 6 total upload components, of which 4 are negative. We have not yet satisfied the temporal threshold because the first set of negative components have a time of 4:05 p.m. and the second set of negative components has a time of 4:07 p.m., which is only a 2-minute time of day difference. We have not yet satisfied the testing threshold because we only have 4 negative upload components, but we need a minimum of 5 negative components when we have recorded less than 20 total components. Next slide. If you also take a 3rd walk after dinner and conduct some additional tests, this may result in meeting the temporal threshold. For example, 2 negative tests at 8:13 p.m. and 8:18 p.m. would be more than 4 hours past 4:05 p.m., satisfying the temporal threshold and resulting in enough tests to meet the testing thresholds. The same example would work if the tests were taken across multiple days at similar times of day. Next slide, please. By running tests while walking your dog, you have successfully challenged the 5G NR outdoor stationary coverage of this provider. The geographic threshold is satisfied because at least 1 hex 9 has at least 2 components of the same type, with at least 1 being negative, the hex 9 labeled number 5. The temporal threshold is satisfied because 2 sets of 2 negative components of the same type are separated by at least 4 hours. The first set tests 1 and number 4, and the second set tests number 7 and number 9. The testing threshold is satisfied because of the 9 total components, 6 are negative, which is greater than the minimum of 5 negative components when fewer than 20 tests are conducted. Next slide, please. It is also possible to challenge larger geographic areas than a hex 8. To challenge a hex 7, at least 4 of its child hex 8s must be challenged by satisfying the geographic, temporal, and testing thresholds for either download or upload speeds. Therefore, the area of 7 hex 8s, or about 5 square kilometers, is challenged by creating cognizable challenges to just 4 of the child hex 8s. To challenge a hex 6, at least 4 of its child hex 7s must be challenged, which means that at least 16 of the grandchild hex 8s must be challenged. Therefore, the area of 49 hex 8s, or about 36 square kilometers, may be challenged by creating cognizable challenges to just 16 of the child hex 8s. Next slide, please. To show how this might work, let's think back to our example of running repeated tests, hands-free using the FCC mobile speed test app, while commuting or running errands in town. The image shows a hex 7 with its 7 child hex 8s and dots along the road indicating test locations. In 4 of the child hex 8s, you will notice green dots indicating the test results that met the required speed for the technology reported, and the red dots indicating tests where the speeds were too low. Imagine that these tests resulted in successful challenges to these 4 hex 8s based on the thresholds we described in earlier slides. When 4 of the 7 hex 8s of a parent hex 7 are challenged, the entire hex 7 becomes challenged. In other words, the 3 hex 8s without any speed tests also become challenged. Note that a hex 7 is over 5 square kilometers. Up next, my colleague will discuss more on the bulk challenge process.
Thank you, Sean. My name is Tom Hastings, and I am an attorney advisor in the FCC's Wireless Telecommunications Bureau. We now turn to the broadband data collection bulk mobile challenge process. And just a reminder that questions may be put in the chat box at any time, and we will address these at the end. Detailed information about the bulk mobile challenge process may be found online at the FCC's BDC Resources and Releases webpage at www.fcc.gov/broadbanddata/resources. Next slide, please. The bulk mobile challenge process allows governmental mobile broadband service providers and other third-party challengers to submit bulk mobile challenges into the BDC system. This process enables mobile challenges to a wider geographic area than a typical consumer challenge may create. To effectuate this wider area challenge, governmental mobile broadband service providers and other third-party challengers may use their own hardware and software to collect speed test data for the mobile challenge process, so long as they include a defined set of metrics laid out the data specifications for mobile speed test data. If electing to use an outside vendor's equipment for testing, please ensure at the outset that the equipment and software comport with the required data specifications and collect the required data for challenges. By having the required data in compliant format, the data may be uploaded into the BDC system. The BDC help article entitled Hardware and Software Requirements for Collecting Bulk Mobile Speed Tests may be helpful to review. And an important note for all challengers to remember, you should be sure to challenge the appropriate environment and technology claimed by the provider. For instance, if challengers are conducting in-vehicle tests, challengers must be sure to challenge only those areas where the provider claims to have in-vehicle coverage. Next slide, please. The bulk mobile challenge process also allows providers to use their own hardware and software to collect on-the-ground test data when using an Android system to respond to challenges if these incorporate the OET-approved test methodology and required metric collection. The methodology and collection must be described when submitting the data into the BDC and be certified by a qualified engineer or officer. Next slide, please. Challengers using their own hardware and software must also submit a full description of the methodology used. These required metrics include temporal elements as noted earlier. These metrics include information about the geographic coordinates, service provider being tested, signal strength, download and upload speeds, latency, and other important data. Challengers must also provide a narrative overview of the overall testing solution, including a description of the test procedures and whether the testing was app-based, software-based, or hardware-based. The type of software and hardware used for the testing and, if available, a URL link to the software and hardware products used. These and other requirements may be found in the data specifications for mobile speed test data, section 6, and the bulk mobile challenge PN at page 3. Note that for all in-vehicle testing, the antenna must be located inside the vehicle. Once you have collected your speed test data and prepared your narrative methodology description, it's a good idea to again compare your formatted data to the data specifications for the mobile speed test data. When you are ready to file your bulk challenge with the FCC, log into the BDC system and navigate to the submissions dashboard. Click the Create Submission. After clicking the Create Submission button and in the drop-down menu, select, for example, Bulk Mobile Challenge. A new link will be created for, in this instance, your Bulk Mobile Challenge, and data may be uploaded there. Again, the data you file must meet the data specifications referenced above for the BDC system to ingest. Otherwise, the BDC system may give error messages or note issue with the files and data you are trying to upload. So please confirm your data adhere to the required data specifications. A video walkthrough entitled How to File Bulk Mobile Availability Challenge Data in the BDC System, available at the BDC Help Center, has further details and walks the user through the BDC system submission process. Another BDC Help video entitled How Providers Should Respond to Mobile Wireless Challenges in the BDC System may also be found for reference and is noted at the end of this section. This concludes the Bulk Mobile Challenge process section. Resources including links to the Bulk Mobile Speed Test Submissions Process Public Notice or Bulk Mobile Challenge PN of September 22, the BDC Mobile Technical Requirements Order, MTRO, the BDC Third Report and Order, and other BDC resources can be found at fcc.gov/broadbanddata/resources. More information, help articles, and videos may also be found at the BDC Help Center at help.bdc.fcc.gov. We will also post this slide deck along with a video of today's webinar on the FCC website. If you plan to conduct bulk mobile challenges, please feel free to reach out to FCC staff in advance. We are happy to discuss your planned approach and answer any questions you might have. Thank you for your time and attention. This concludes the presentation part. We now transition to Q&A. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kamia Nix-Suresh. I'm a legal advisor in the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, and we'd like to once again thank you all for joining us this afternoon. And as several of the speakers have mentioned, if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A function. We are getting a lot of them in, so if we're unable for any reason to get to your question, I'd encourage you to go to the BDC Help Center and you can submit your question that way. Our subject matter experts will get back to you. Okay, so the first question I will toss over to Sean. Sean, when should speed tests be taken? Does it matter, what time of day or the dates of the speed tests?
I can answer this question in two ways. One, speed tests must be conducted between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m. local time. The other way I can answer it is that there is no deadline to submit speed tests, and new speed tests are continually considered against the latest mobile coverage data. And then speed tests have a shelf life of 1 year before they will no longer be considered.
Thanks, Sean. Next question, I think, Tom, you're in the best position to answer. Once a cognizable challenge is created, you mentioned that providers get an opportunity to respond. Can you expand a little bit more on what that entails and what that looks like?
Sure. After a cognizable challenge is created, the provider will have 60 days to respond. A provider may either concede or rebut a challenge in the BDC system. To rebut a challenge, a provider is required to submit on-the-ground data or in some circumstances may submit information about its network infrastructure. If a challenge is conceded by a provider or upheld by the FCC, the provider will have 30 days to update its mobile availability coverage data to indicate on the national broadband map that the challenge area was shown to have insufficient coverage.
Thanks, Tom. Will, this was alluded to in the video, but do I need to put in my contact information and other information like that to use the speed test app?
No, you can use the speed test app to run speed test anonymously. However, to submit speed test data as challenge data, you'll need to fill out certain fields, which include name and email address.
Thanks, Will. Coming back to you, Sean. So, everybody has covered sort of general information about how to file bulk and consumer mobile challenges. But are there any specific tips you might have if folks are interested in filing challenges as related to the 5G fund?
Sure. The Commission's second report and order specifies 5G fund reliance on the national broadband map and defines areas eligible for support that 1, lack 5G mobile service at speeds of 7.1 megabits per second in an outdoor stationary environment. 2, are not in urban areas as defined by the Census Bureau. And 3, contains at least one location in the broadband serviceable location fabric, or at least some portion of a road using data from OpenStreetMap. And challengers should consider these issues as it relates to the 5G fund.
Thanks. And related to that, Tom, what vintage of the BDC data will the Commission use as a basis for determining eligible areas for the 5G fund Phase 1 auction?
The Commission has not committed to a specific vintage at this point, but has said that it will use the most recent, i.e. the as of date of BDC mobile availability data that has been published on the national broadband map, and which the public has had the opportunity to challenge in advance of the auction. The final list of eligible areas for the 5G fund Phase 1 auction based on this vintage will be released at least 30 days prior to the start of bidding.
Thanks, Tom. And is there any indication at this time regarding when the Commission will hold the Phase 1 5G fund auction?
Sure. While proceeding with the 5G fund Phase 1 auction, it is a priority for the Commission. Several steps still need to be taken before we can determine when the auction will begin. As with any Commission auction, these next steps include releasing public notices, seeking comment on the procedures for conducting the 5G fund Phase 1 auction, then a later PN adopting those procedures, and then collecting, reviewing, and approving short form applications for parties interested in participating in the auction.
Thanks, Tom. Lots to do. Will, this one's for you. So while you were showing the map, there were areas where you could see no hexagons at all. What does that mean for somebody looking at the map?
Where you don't see any hexagons or other shading on the mobile map, that means that the provider has not, that no provider has reported coverage in that area.
Thanks, Will. Sean, coming to you. So as Will was demoing the how to view speed tests on the map, some of them said accepted, some said rejected, and some said challenged. Can you explain what those things mean?
The speed test categorized as accepted indicates that the test has been accepted by the BDC system, but it has not been used as part of a cognizable challenge. This may be because the test shows passing coverage or that it has not yet met the thresholds to create a challenge. Speed tests classified as rejected because they're invalid. For example, the test was conducted outside a provider's coverage area. And speed test categorized as challenge indicate that the test has been used to create a cognizable challenge.
Thanks, Sean. Tom, this one's about filing requirements by providers in the first instance. Are the mobile carriers including the coverage of their roaming partners as well?
No, mobile providers should only submit coverage data based on the network facilities that they own and operate. They should not submit coverage data for networks that they roam on.
Thanks, Tom. I'll hand this one to Will. Will there be requirements to submit higher 5G data areas instead of pushing anything higher than 35.3 to 35.3? So for example, wideband, ultra, true 5G around downtown areas in particular. This person wants to know if those things are under consideration.
At this time, the highest minimum speed that the BDC captures is 35.3. We're not currently considering adding additional speed tiers, but the commission continues to monitor developments in the industry.
Thanks, Will. Tom, coming back to you. Somebody said that they've heard that several carriers are trying to submit challenges, but are not able to submit in the FCC portal. Are you able to comment on that?
Sure. Today, we have heard from one carrier that was unable to upload challenge data into the FCC portal due to some missing fields. You can find more information about the required fields in the data specifications for mobile speed test data, and can find more information about formatting a submission on the BDC Help Center. And we will add a link to that in the chat. If a provider is intending to submit bulk mobile challenge data, we would encourage you to contact staff if you have any questions.
Thanks, Tom. Will, this one's related to the data downloads that you were demoing. Are there any plans for a list of mobile providers by state, or to download the spatial data by state or nationally instead of searching providers individually?
Yeah, you can download mobile coverage data by particular technologies, so 4G, 5G, voice for a particular state from the National Broadband Map. If you go to the data downloads page that I showed, and on the by state tab, you'll select a state from the drop-down menu on the right-hand side, and then from there you can choose whether to download the coverage for that state in an ESRI shapefile or GeoPackage format. And you can also view the mobile coverage in a particular state on the map by going to the area summary page. And we also want to note that you can use an API to pull down data from the map in a customized way, and information on how that can be found. And on the data downloads page, you'll want to look at the BDC public data API specifications link in the upper right-hand corner.
Thank you. And like I said, we're getting lots of questions, so we're going to continue going rapid fire, but I think Zoom will kick us out in 10 minutes. So if we don't get to your question, follow up with us, and we're happy to be helpful as we can. Sean, somebody asked, what about third-party professional drive testing results uploaded into the portal to challenge?
Yeah, as we noted, parties are able to use third-party software and hardware to collect test results and then submit those results in the BDC system as bulk mobile challenges. Keep in mind that the speed test data in a bulk challenge needs to comply with the data specifications for mobile speed test data. Parties that submit bulk mobile challenges in the BDC system must also upload information about the methodologies they use to collect the speed tests included in the bulk challenge, including a narrative description, the radio technologies and the devices used for testing, the type of data plan, the testing environment, and information on the antenna used in testing.
Thanks, Sean. Tom, I'm going to give you a combined set of questions that all seem to be related. So we have a couple of similar questions that all touch on how test results are shared when there is no service. So how does it get reported using the FCC app, or about consumer testing in areas with limited provider coverage? You know, are there alternative testing methods available to consumers located in areas with no provider coverage within a 5-mile radius? Relatedly, what if my device shows no service, but the map shows coverage by a provider in the BDC? Do you have any thoughts on sort of that combination of questions?
Sure, I'll try to unpack that a bit. Yeah, consumers or other interested parties can use the FCC mobile speed test app to run tests in the area with no coverage. tests taken with the FCC Mobile Speed Test app are automatically shared with the FCC. Any tests taken in an area with no coverage will be transmitted to the FCC once the device is back in an area where it has a network connection. Any speed test collected, using a different app would need to be submitted as a bulk challenge data, as we discussed, the parameters required for that earlier.
Thanks, Tom, and well done. Okay, Will. All of the challenges for mobility are discussing using mobile speed tests, meaning one is in motion. Yet the 5G fund is based on outdoor stationary coverage, meaning you are stationary. So in rural and remote areas, are you supposed to drive or walk to a lot of different points and take measurements?
Yeah, when taking tests in an outdoor stationary environment or in motion, you will have to move around to meet the various thresholds. But when we're talking about mobile challenges, discussing challenges to mobile broadband availability, and those challenges can be against either a provider's reported outdoor stationary coverage or in-vehicle coverage. And we would separately refer you to the 5G fund order and the team working on that auction for further questions about the 5G fund.
Thanks, Will. Tom, can we use engineering handsets to conduct the speed test, or does it need to be a consumer using consumer devices only?
Yeah, as we discussed earlier, for the bulk mobile challenges, different types of equipment can be used. Parties that collect and submit these bulk challenges need to include information about the type of equipment used, and that would be part of the methodology description, which is part of the bulk mobile challenge submission. Yeah.
Thanks. Okay, I think this one we'll give to Sean. Since approximately 80% of 911 calls from the public come from a mobile device, which is often the only device they may have, and approximately 60% of those 911 calls come from a mobile device inside a building, why are in-building tests from a wireless device not considered in the testing process? This person had their statistics ready to go. And will indoor testing be considered in the future?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Given the probabilistic nature of wireless and various factors such as interior walls and structures that could impact the wireless indoor coverage, the commission determined the focus of on the collection of outdoor stationary and in-vehicle coverage data.
Thanks, Sean. I will take the next one. When will information presented on this video be posted on the FCC website? So the video itself will be posted soon as we get the recording uploaded and things like that. But all of the information that we've covered is already available on the BDC Help Center, and we've put in links to that website. So you'll find video tutorials kind of walking through everything that we've discussed. You'll find articles, you'll find how-tos, FAQs, all kinds of information. So I would encourage you all to go to help.bdc.fcc.gov. There's also a submit a request option on that page. So like I said, if we're unable to answer your question, or if you have a much more specific question, I would suggest submitting it that way, because then we can have team members kind of deep dive into your specific question. Okay. Can a local ISP operating in a rural area bid for the fund without first registering as a wireless service provider? I'll take this one. This is the type of information that will be covered in the comment PN that the commission will release shortly. We've also, touched on several aspects of the 5G fund today, but this webinar is really intended to focus on how to file mobile challenges generally. So as Tom and others have mentioned throughout, if you have questions specific to the 5G fund, we recommend that you reach out to that team so that we make sure your questions are answered accurately. Let's see. Tom, you have mentioned a bulk format link. I think that's the data specifications. Are you able to either put that in the chat or direct folks to where to find it?
Sure, I think we may have a Help Center article that just came up in the chat, submitting a bulk. I think, yeah, it looks like they're there. So the requirements for the bulk mobile challenge. So yes, if you go to those links in the chat, those should link you to, I think, the BDC Help Center, which also have links back to the data specs, and should, those should be off on the side if it's not, the related stuff. So please check those links that were posted in the chat.
Thanks, Tom. Will, I think you may have covered this in your map demo, but when test data is submitted, do you get to see a map of the results?
Yes, you can see the results by logging in to the FCC National Broadband Map and navigating to the Consumer Challenges tab.
Thanks, Will. Tom, back to you. If you're submitting a bulk challenge, we do not need to provide the consumer details as required. Is that true?
So a bulk mobile challenge, as discussed earlier, must include the speed test data that complies with the speed test data specification, as well as the required methodology information. So, just keep in mind that a bulk mobile challenge collected by a third party can enter the contact information of the challenger, or in other words, it would be the same for all of those tests.
Thanks, Tom. And I'm looking at the clock, it's 4:14. So with that, that concludes our Q&A. Again, thank you so much for tuning in, and we hope that this webinar was helpful. If you have follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to us. Feel free to visit the Help Center and submit a request if you would like more hands-on sort of deep dive assistance. And we thank you again for joining us this afternoon.